Shalom, I'm Joseph Good, and this is my wife, Debbie Good. And we have a new program that's called Mishpachah, means family, which is produced by Primetime Christian Television. For years, I've been teaching about the Passover, about the various festivals of God, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, the Sabbath, things about the wedding from the Bible and so forth. And so many questions have come in, people asking, well, how do you do things? How do you do the Sabbath, or how do you do Passover? And so we have a new program to bring and illustrate these things we do in our family. And that's why it's called Mishpachah, family. So Debbie, this is really your program. You're the host, and it's Passover season.
That would be hostess. Honey.
Hostess.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, so it's Passover season.
Yes, we're right on the brink of Passover season. And one of the things we do before Passover is we get rid of all the leaven.
What is leaven?
Okay, leaven is anything in your household, anything that is of an edible product that causes things to puff up or to rise. Now, I have a little bit more of a description of leaven that I can read to you. And by the way, the Hebrew word for leaven that we use is chametz.
Okay, chametz.
Yeah, chametz. Okay.
Chametz.
Chametz refers to all leavened products containing wheat, barley, oats, rye, or spelt. During Passover, it is forbidden to eat, own, or derive benefit from chametz or any mixture containing chametz or leaven, even in the smallest amount. So what we have to do is right before Passover, we have to go for this big search all over the household to find anything that resembles chametz. I would say a big search all over the household. You're thinking, oh, that shouldn't be too difficult. My kitchen's usually clean. Okay, well, let's explain some of the examples of where you can find chametz. Okay, for example, Joe.
Okay, well, you can find chametz in your couch.
In your couch, yes.
There's chametz on your drapes.
It's hard to imagine that happening, but in our family, I think it probably does, yes.
And it's chametz literally is your cabinets.
All the cabinets have to be completely wiped down and cleaned, vacuumed. Everything has to be cleaned. You mentioned under the couch. How about, here's a horrible one for us, the bedrooms. You tell the kids not to eat in the bedroom, and what do? They're going to sneak food in there anyway. And then here's a toughie. See, if they ever eat anything, especially at school, they go to a game or a movie or do something like that, what's going to end up in their pocket?
Crumbs.
That's right, they might have cracker crumbs, candy bar crumbs, things like that. And there's always going to be some type of a grain or grain product found there. And then here's a biggie. And I haven't even touched on the car and the garage, but the other biggie is the pet, the family pet. And we do have a family pet. We have a couple, actually.
We have a couple, yes.
That's right.
Not to count the fish.
That's right. What do you think they make dog food out of?
That's right. It has all types of leaven inside it, so you've got to get rid of your dog food.
Even the dog food
plan a menu
goes
for the
out.
dog.
Exactly right. So there is this big search to take care of all the leaven or the chametz in the household. Now, for a week, during the week of unleavened bread, which, by the way, means bread that cannot be puffed up or risen, during this week, you're not allowed to have any chametz. And this, by the way, is a biblical restriction. It's not something we invented or made up. It's not
tradition.
Even. That's right. It is something that is actually in the Bible. Okay. So what do you eat?
Well, you have to eat unleavened products.
That's right. Which means that apples are okay.
Yes,
and
apples.
Oranges are okay.
Bananas are okay. How about rice?
We do not eat rice because, again, that is a grain and it puffs up, okay? Corn products we also do not eat because it is a type of a grain. It puffs up.
But with that's
it's easy to give up corn for a week, though.
But corn products, it says in the smallest amount, and corn syrup, almost every candy you have has corn syrup in it, Cokes and Dr. Peppers and
corn starch, either corn syrup or corn starch. Now, there are
Coffee
some things
Mate
you can
has
do.
corn crystals in it.
That's right. For example, we mentioned that there are some things you can do to get through this week that can use products that are not necessarily leavened products. For example, and I just happen to have some with me today, there is a potato starch that is made. Usually you can find these in the kosher or the ethnic section of the food stores or grocery stores. But you can use potato starch wherever you would use cornstarch. Let's say you want to thicken a gravy or a soup. Potato starch can be used the same way, exactly. And of course, the other item we use a lot of would be matzah meal. And again, this can be found usually in the ethnic or the kosher section of a grocery store. Now, matzah meal is a very finely ground up product from matzah bread.
Well, let's talk what matzah means. Matzah is the Hebrew word for unleavened.
Unleavened bread. That's right. Remember, the whole celebration of Passover has to do with when the children of Israel were delivered out of the idolatry and the paganism of Egypt and taken out of this their bondage of slavery, and right before they go into the new land, the land that God promised, actually about 40 years before they go into the new land, okay? So it's basically, Passover is going to deal with the deliverance of the people. Now, it says that they left Egypt in haste. Therefore, they did not have time to leaven or to build up the bread. And so this is, so it becomes a staple of the Passover season.
And that's a biblical commandment. It's not a tradition. Biblical commandment that you are to eat matzah and not eat hametz.
That's right. Now, I have heard of some people saying, oh, you can make matzah by taking matzah meal, use it with water and bake it. I'm thinking, no, you can't do that, because matzah meal is matzah. It's just very finely ground up. If we can take a look at this, right, this is a picture. These are some matzahs which we will be using later on. But matzah is a very, very thin cracker-type bread, usually about so big.
It's very filling.
It's very filling. And so the meal is also, now I'll tell you, one of the ways I use matzah meal, for example, it stays in our kitchen now as a staple item when I am making a meatloaf. You know, with as many children as we have to stretch meat sometimes. And so when I fix a meatloaf, instead of adding, say, the cracker crumbs or the bread crumbs, a lot of times you don't know for sure if they're kosher. I know that matzah meal is kosher. So it's very good as a binding agent for salmon loaves, ground meat or meatloaves.
We mentioned that matzah is very filling. It's called, in the book of Deuteronomy, it's referred to as lechem oni, which means the bread of affliction. And all over the world, they used unleavened bread to feed prisoners because it was cheaper. It filled them up. And so with just a little bit of bread, it went a long ways.
Well, one of the things we're going to do today is we're going to have that very most common, widely used product using matzah, the matzah ball. We're going to have matzah ball soup. And by the way, you can purchase a ready-made soup mix. If you could set those over there. There are several times that I've actually done this. I've used a soup mix where you can buy the matzah meal package and it has a soup mix all in the box. The directions will tell you, after you mix up everything, to boil them directly in the soup mix. We are not going to do that today. Most often recipes will tell you to boil the matzah balls in salted water. And the reason is because matzah balls start out very, very little and then they do expand. And they don't puff up, but they do expand. They absorb the liquid. And we don't want to drain all of our soup mix by absorbing them into the matzah balls. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started in mixing up some matzah balls soup. Now, again, matzah balls are going to be eaten at any time of the year, all during the year. Very, very common, but particularly during the Passover season because you cannot have leavened products, okay? So first thing I've done, by the way, is we have a large pot with approximately 2.5, 3 quarts of water going in at a rapid or a rolling boil, and we've added maybe about a tablespoon of salt. We want some salted water in which to drop the matzah balls. So what we're going to do is take a couple of eggs.
Check it for blood.
I'll tell you what, I'll check one if you'll check the other, and we look underneath, make sure there's no blood spots.
Because then you can't eat blood.
And I can guarantee you that if there had been any blood spots, I would have already removed them, and they wouldn't have been on the set today, okay? So we take care of those. And then I like to just kind of stir them around or whip them with a fork just to get them all mixed in. They don't have to be real fluffy, but we want them to be nice and mixed. Okay. One of the things that makes matzo balls very light and puffed up is that, or not puffed up, I should say, but very, very light and expanded will be the eggs. And by the way, I don't know if we explained this a minute ago, but a matzo ball is basically a dumpling. It's a type of dumpling that we're going to make today. Now we're going to take about a half a cup of our matzah meal. And you see it's just very, very finely ground meal. Just like I said, it's like a cracker crumb. It's not actually in the grain process. It's actually beyond that. It's already cooked and been ground up. And to that, we're going to add 1/4 cup of liquid. And a lot of times they'll tell you to add water. What I've done here is add a little bit of my chicken broth or the stock because I like to give it a little bit of taste because matzo meal can be a very bland product. And since we are going to boil this in salted water and not the soup stock, what I'm doing is using a little bit of soup stock to actually flavor the matzo balls.
Let me ask you a question on that part. We eat kosher, and I know that a lot of people that are watching this program that they're starting to eat kosher, have a lot of questions. Did you just go buy a regular chicken broth, or was there a special kosher chicken broth that you purchased?
No, sweetheart, let me say first of all that you should have been married to me long enough to know that I'm not going to just go out and buy any kind. No, this particular soup stock, by the way, was made from a bouillon cube. 1 cube to 1 cup of water, and it is found in the kosher section. And
maybe another program will show some of those cubes.
We might do that. You can actually get powdered kind that comes in a little jar or can. You can get bouillon cubes that, like I said, are in the kosher section. You can even buy chicken canned stock, which we have used on occasion. A lot of times, if we're going to do just matzo ball soup, then I will maybe add some stock to it and not just have the powder kind. But of course, the best way is to get the stock yourself by boiling your own chicken. You cut up a chicken and you basically make your soup with the celery, the carrots, the whole thing, and then you remove all those ingredients. Because usually when we have matzo ball soup, we'll have just the matzo ball and the broth, but we save the chicken and the vegetables to be used with some of the broth for another meal.
If you are wanting to really follow in a kosher way, not saying that you have to do that, but if you're wanting to, and it's Passover season, then you want to be sure that the chicken broth or the bouillon cubes you buy are kosher for Passover.
Okay, well now let's go on with these matzo balls because we want to get them all mixed up. Okay, now so we had the half a cup of matzo meal, a couple of eggs, and about 1/4 cup of liquid. In this case it was chicken stock. I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of salt, anywhere from between 1/2 to say a teaspoon, and approximately 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Now again, to this you can use like a chicken fat or something with flavor. I usually don't because I don't just keep stuff like that hanging around my kitchen. I usually use just a plain regular vegetable oil. And here we're going to want to get that really ground up. And I have to add also that it's probably going to look kind of icky. Not really the nicest looking product in the world. It is. We'll get that all nicely mixed, completely ground up and mixed, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the refrigerator version. Take this, stick it in the refrigerator, and keep it there for at least 20 minutes, at least 20. And then we're going to take the part that we already have, and it should be rather stiff at this point. As a matter of fact, if I touch it, this almost doesn't bounce back at me. See, it's just kind of... Okay, and what we're going to do is take this mixture that's been in the refrigerator now for a good 15-20 minutes, and we're going to roll it up into small balls. And I tell you what, we have a couple of people here today who might be able to help us with that process if you would like to introduce them.
Okay, these are 2 of our daughters. This is Paula, and Paula's in college, and this is Rebecca, she's in high school. So what do you want them to do? Well,
what I'm going to do is, by the way, it does help also if you have your hands a tiny bit wet. Which we did, but you take just a very small amount, stick it in your hand, and then just roll it between your palms. Roll it to where it's about the size of, what do you think that is, Joe? You're the Mr. Measurement. What do you think, about 3/4 to an inch?
Yeah, that's
something like that.
A little bit smaller than a ping pong ball.
A little smaller than a ping pong ball. Okay, I'm thinking the diameter of a 1/4. Okay? Whatever works for you. So, girls, if you would, let's move the bowl over. And let's start getting hands dirty and try to get the ball down as close to the water as you can without getting burned, because if you drop it from high up, then it's going to splash. I tell you what, Paula, why don't we just set this over here on the stove, and Rebecca, we can get you two in here and we'll get them started. I'm going to help them to get these started, and then we'll let them take over on this while we talk a little bit more about chametz and matzah. And let's see. So we want to get all of those in there. Keep the water at a rolling boil to where it's and you notice that they're rather small now, but what's going to happen is that they're going to expand
and
with
float
the water.
To the top.
That's right. Now, let me wipe my hands very quickly.
Okay.
And we'll let the girls finish up that work. And let me mention a couple of things about matzah or chametz, and as I mentioned before. And girls, I'm going to leave this up here for you. when you finish. I have with me a cookbook that I use quite a bit. This is called, by the way, the Complete Kosher Jewish Cookbook, and it's put out by the Lubavitch organization out of Brooklyn, New York. I've used this quite a bit at home. I don't use it so much for the recipes, although I have used several recipes out of here, but it's most helpful on information on household hints, on things for a kosher kitchen, and it will have some commentary on all of the festivals. And one of the things they have in here, I just thought this was so meaningful when I read this the first time. They have the meaning of chametz and matzah.
Okay, chametz is leaven, and matzah is unleavened.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right. Chametz and matzah are both made of flour and water. You see, a lot of people ask us from time to time, well, if matzah is made from flour, why can it be used? And why isn't it considered to be chametz? Okay.
Okay.
Now, let me read on a little bit further. I'm going to let you see if you can come up with an answer for that.
Okay.
The only difference between them is that chametz rises, while matzah remains flat. Chametz is thus indicative of inflated egotism, arrogance, and self-love. Okay, so as I mentioned before, both are made with flour and water, and the big difference basically is the amount of time the water comes in touch with the flour.
Okay. So chametz is going to be equated with things that we would call sin.
Absolutely. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, there is a verse in
Yes,
the New Testament that
1 Corinthians 5 talks about the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
That's right.
Now, to not keep the festival with the chametz. And they're talking about the sin in your own life. So, go ahead.
Okay, and as I mentioned, that the chametz is indicative of, and I love what they express this, inflated egotism, arrogance, and self-love. Matzah, which the Torah calls poor man's bread, and
That's the lekamoni.
that's mentioned in Deuteronomy 16:3. This symbolizes the qualities of selflessness and humility. Okay, now does it make us holier if we get all the chametz out of the house?
No, but it
No.
sure teaches us lessons.
That's exactly right. And I love what this says here. And continuing on in the same little passage we were reading about, as we work to remove all traces of chametz from our homes, we are aware of the deeper significance of chametz and endeavor to remove the spiritual chametz from within ourselves. We have an opportunity to go beyond our limitations, to leave Egypt by developing the qualities represented by the matzah. So see, it's not that it makes us holier, but it teaches us a very valuable lesson that we could use, even using the mundane things of this world, we can apply some type of spiritual principle to. And that's really what all of this is about, isn't it? Is to learn something about ourselves and our walk with God, to learn something about His nature by doing some of the things in our homes.
Well, as we go every year into Passover cleaning, it takes about 1 month. We start about a month before Passover, and we clean the whole house. And the first thing that you learn that first year is, wow, chametz is everywhere.
Absolutely.
And you start
Didn't
thinking,
realize
well,
you
chametz
had
is
so much
about
leaven
sin.
in there, right?
Then you start looking at your own life, and you see, I've got chametz in my life all over the pride and egotism and being puffed up and all types of things. And as you take that chametz out of your house, then at the same time, you're supposed to be going through a spiritual repentance and getting the chametz out.
That's right. Now let's take just a little small deviation, a little detour. I know you never take detours, do you?
No, not me.
No rabbit trails with Joe. Okay, what we're going to do is take a look at what we just put on the stove over here. Matzo balls are rising a little bit. We need them to stay cooking in this boiling liquid for, I would say, 20 minutes. So what I'm going to do is lower the heat. If I can get around here, and I'm going to lower it to just above simmer. And generally what I do at home is I put a lid on it, but I crack it a little bit so that some of the steam will rise up, and basically it can breathe, but we trap in some of the heat. Because one of the things that makes a matzo ball really good is whether or not it's going to expand and be light and fluffy
rather than
and
heavy.
very, very, that's right.
Those
Heavy
were
matzo
floating.
ball.
Those were floating.
They were
all
floating.
around, so that's great.
That's right. And what we do is you let this stay in here, like I said, a good 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes is really a little bit better. But the main thing is to cook it slowly over a long period of time to make them very, very light. Then what you do is you remove them from the salted water and put them into your soup stock, which we just happen to have done over here. And you can see, if I can hold this up, how it's expanded. And the camera get a good look at that. See, it's a lot bigger than those little round quarter-sized balls we had a while ago. And so those,
very good.
That's right. And they are very, very filling. You will want to stir the pot a little bit. This has been sitting a little bit, but They'll be very, very light, but they will be filling at the same time. So we'll just let those continue to cook. And we'll have both pots going.
You can have this matzo ball soup anytime, but it's traditional to have it during the week of Passover, especially your Passover meal.
Because of the restrictions of not having any chametz or any leaven-type products. You can't have bread, you can't have rolls, you can't have cereals, you can't have rice products, you can't have corn, you can't have the corn syrup products, as you mentioned a while ago. There's so much that you cannot have. And again, it's really only 1 week that you're doing without these products. But it's neat how a lot of times people have come up with very creative ways of keeping the commandments, but keeping them in such ways to be an enjoyment also. Now, one of the things we do in our family also, as a matter of fact, when we have our Seder, a lot of times I will serve matzo ball soup at our Seder, but one of the most essential elements in our Seder at home is to have one of the children read the 4 questions. And by the way, for people who are going to have a Passover Seder, one thing you need is you have to have a Haggadah. The Haggadah is the book that gives you the order of the Seder. It tells you how you proceed, what you do, when you do it, the prayers you recite, and things like this. And there are many, many Haggadot. You can find a Haggadah anywhere. Any good Jewish catalog should have them. They're very, very easy to find. People do not have to have ours. But we do have one, and we like to think that it's user-friendly for those of us who maybe haven't been doing this for quite so long. So each person who is able to read, who is an old enough age to be able to read, should have a Haggadah. And one of the elements, or one of the parts of the Seder that comes along during that first night of the Seder is called Manishtana, which is the asking of the 4 questions. And this really should be done by a child. However, it is not always done by a child.
And the child usually sings it to the
father.
Exactly. It's a family.
Let me tell you,
ceremony.
One of the most moving things I have read was in the book Exodus by Leon Uris. You know the story. You know, most people have seen the movie with Paul Newman. Well, the book was actually better. I think the book is very, very good. But at the very end of it, it ends with a Passover Seder taking place, where an older gentleman is leading the Seder, and a young man who's very possibly got at least his master's and probably working on his doctorate in college. He's the youngest one available, and he sings the Manishtana. I don't know if he sings them. He might read them, but in most families it is traditional to sing them. Now, one of the things we have found in our family is that singing helps to learn the Hebrew. Singing helps to learn the questions or some of the blessings and the things we do. It's the melody that helps with the memorization. And it helps in all learning experiences. But one of the questions people ask us the most is, how do you do it? Well, the words are already there. The words are going to be in any Haggadah. You'll find the words anywhere. But the thing is, the tune is sometimes a little bit difficult to find. So what we thought we'd do is have our girls come on and sing their version, which is a typical version that you can find in some publications, and have them ask the 4 questions by song. So here are Paula and Rebecca again. And by the way, this is found on page 21 of our Haggadah. It's going to be towards the beginning of any Passover Seder.
Startable.
Amen, Sumasa. Halalase, Gulo Masa. Halalase, Gulo Masa. Shebako Halelot, Anulokin, Shayirakot, Shayirakot. Halalase, Kulo Maror. Halalase, Kulo Maror. Shebeko Halelot, Inanu Matlilin, Afilu Bamechat, Afilu Bamechat. Halalase, Shetefamim. Halalase, lahase, shete falamim. Shebeko hallelujah, Anukim, ben yoshvinu, ben mesubim, ben yoshvinu, ben mesubim. Halai lahase, kulanu mesubim. Halai lahase, kulanu mesubim.
Very, very good, girls. I'm very pleased. And by the way, let me read to you what the translation of this is in English so that people out there will know what it is you've been saying. By the way, we refer to this as the 4 questions. The first question is not really one of the 4, but it's the most famous saying that we have ever thought of with Passover. It's, why is this night different from all other nights? And then actually comes next the 4 questions, or the answers in some cases. On all other nights we eat chametz and matzah. On this night only matzah. That was question number 1. Question number 2, on all other nights we eat any type of vegetable. On this night only maror. Then the third, on all other nights we are required to dip, we are not required to dip even once, but on this night we dip twice. And number 4, on all other nights we eat sitting or leaning, and this night only leaning. And again, these are all integral questions to our Passover Seder. And Joe, if you would like to finish up by explaining that, I'm going to check on our matzo ball soup and even dish up a little bit.
All right. Let me just get through here. Let me mention to you that the recipe for the matzo ball soup, as well as the song, the Manish tonight, is on our website. You can see the address on the screen, and you can go to it. We hope that you'll keep Passover and you'll start to incorporate some soup and some songs and all of these things into your Passover Seder, and that you'll be like our family, our Mishpachah, and begin to develop your own customs, your own ways, learning how to walk in the ways of God. Shalom.